What is going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be converting my Dblocks Big Ripper to hydraulic disc brakes from the mechanical V brakes that come stock on the bike. So before I actually get into installing the parts on the bike, I'm going to talk a little bit about the parts that I bought that are required to do this conversion. So if you want to do it yourself, you can buy these exact parts and do the exact same process yourself. So the first part you're going to need for this conversion is a bike that has a threaded hub on the rear. And if you don't know what that means, it basically just means that you can thread one of these 6-bolt adapters onto it, and then the rotor bolts to these, because if you don't have a threaded hub, you can't actually put a disc on the wheel. So you need a bike with a threaded hub, and the Dblocks Big Ripper comes with a threaded hub stock, so you can do this conversion. And the next part you're going to need, and the part that makes this whole thing possible, is this disc brake adapter from a company called Stacked BMX. I believe they're out of California. So this adapter replicates what would come stock on a bike that has disc brakes on it. And this bar up here, the part that says stacked with the 2 holes in it, that replicates where the bracket will be welded to the frame on a bike if it came factory with disc brakes. So the next part you'll need are these 6-bolt adapters that I already talked about. These are 44 millimeter. Basically, these just thread onto the threaded hub that I was talking about. And each of the 6 holes around that central hole are also threaded that you could thread a disc rotor to. So the next part you'll need is one of these Shimano adapters. I read on the Stacked BMX website that you need a 160 millimeter adapter, which is this one. But I did watch a video by Steezy Films, and he did this conversion himself on this exact bike that I have, and he ended up needing a 180 millimeter adapter. So I bought both of them, 160 and 180, and I'm just going to return the one that I don't use. Next is the rotor. Again, I bought a 160 and a 180. I think they're both from Shimano. So last but not least, you are going to need hydraulic disc brakes. These are Shimano MT200s that I bought from Stacked BMX with this adapter. So shout out to Stacked BMX for the overnight shipping on these. And it's just the rear, no front brake, because the Dblocks Big Ripper doesn't have a front brake. So this conversion is going to be a bit harder than, not harder, but a bit more complex than what I did with my other bike, because my other bike came with disc brakes on it. They were just cable pull, they were mechanical disc brakes. And so all you needed to do was take off the disc brakes that were already on there and put the new ones on, and they're plug and play, it just works. But this, obviously we have 1, 2, 3, 4 adapters that we're gonna have to try, and so it's gonna be a bit more complicated, but in the end it's worth it because hydraulic disc brakes are much better than mechanical V brakes. I'm not gonna go into detail about why they're better. You could probably look up someone on YouTube who can explain it much better than I can and find a video on why exactly hydraulic disc brakes and disc brakes in general are better than V brakes. And links to all these parts will be in the description of this video if I didn't already put that in the video. Links to the exact websites that I bought these products from, so if you have this bike, you can do this conversion with the parts that are linked in the description. And I'm gonna be using my actual camera, it's a Sony a7 III. I'm gonna be using that to film some of the more detailed stuff, and that I can make a comprehensive video on how exactly you do this conversion, because there's a lot of vagueness out there and a lot of people not telling exactly what they use and not giving all of the details of the process to do this. So I figured I'd be as comprehensive as possible. Let's get into it. So this part of the video is just going to be a bunch of cut up clips of me taking these brakes off. So I start by just getting all my tools together. Pretty much everything came off with a 5mm Allen. I used a ratchet, I used a T-handle, and I used just a regular Allen key. So you start by just loosening up these bolts that hold the brakes on there, and I end up going for a T-handle because I don't want to sit there ratcheting this back and forth all day. And then notice when I take these bolts out, I am putting them in the same place that I put my pegs, and all the washers, everything is put in the same spot so that nothing ever rolls away, nothing ever gets lost. I also always put my tools away after I'm done using them. That way, again, nothing ever gets lost. The workbench doesn't get cluttered. the brakes just pop off these pins, and then you could just kind of hang them there. And so these pins, even though, you know, they look kind of ugly with them sticking up from the frame, there's nothing you could do about them. They're welded onto the frame. So what I would recommend you do is put the Allen bolts that you just took out back in those holes to prevent any water or any dirt from getting in there and ruining those threads, so that if you ever wanted to put the stock brakes back on, you wouldn't be able to. Then it's time to take the grip off. So I loosen the lever and I use an air compressor to get the grip off. These are ODI mushroom grips that come stock on it, and they suck. I hate them. They're so hard, and it literally took me, it's not an exaggeration, they probably took me 10 minutes to get this grip off. And I was going to replace them while I had them off, but I just didn't get around to ordering new ones. So then I just had to loosen up the lever a little more to be able to pull it off. So once I have the lever off, I just kind of dangle it through the bars, as you see here. And I actually had to lift my bike up from the bike stand a little bit to pull the cable through. Then the brakes are off. And to take the rear wheel off, you take the chain off the front sprocket first, then the rear sprocket. And with nothing holding the wheel there, you should just be able to pull it right out. So if you're confused by that last clip, I got to the point in the conversion where I had to put the threaded adapter on the hub, but as you could see, it didn't fit. I spent the rest of that day searching literally everywhere on the internet to try to find an adapter that would work, but they simply don't exist. They just don't make adapters for this problem that I have. So I took my rear wheel to a bike shop and I asked him if he knew of any adapters that would work, or, you know, any solution really to this problem. And he said basically the only thing you could do is buy a new hub. And obviously at first I wasn't stoked because I had spent all this time and money trying to get all these parts together. I'd waited weeks to do this conversion just to find out that I can't actually do it. And so I thought about it for a day or two, and then ultimately I came to the decision that, you know, if I'm going to be the one to enjoy this bike and I'm going to be the one riding it, I want to be able to enjoy it to the best of its ability, and upgrading the brakes is only going to help with the experience of riding the bike. So ultimately, they pointed me in the direction of this right here. This is a Box 3 Pro hub. So this hub has a 6-bolt adapter fixed to it, so it bypasses the whole problem of not being able to thread a 6-bolt adapter onto it. So today I'm going to be taking this hub to the bike shop that I initially went to, and I'm going to have him relace the rear wheel for me, and we'll see how it goes. You know, hopefully everything should work after that. So I'll catch you guys after the bike shop. I probably won't film in there at all. I might make a little montage of me going there, but I probably won't film in there at all just because I don't want to. It's a small bike shop. I don't really want to like freak the guy out walking in there with a camera or walking in there with a GoPro strapped to my chest. So yeah, I'll see you guys after the bike shop. So, back in the garage, that last clip was filmed 2 days ago, and I took my bike to the shop, and he was able to put this new hub on. This is the same Box 3 Pro hub that I showed earlier in the video, and as you can see, and if I could stand this up, as you can see, this has a 6-bolt adapter built into it. So there's no need for any adapters or anything to fit the rotor onto the hub. It just fits right on there. And what's different about this is, so it's not actually an axle that runs all the way through. There's just 2 Allen bolts. They could adjust in or out depending on how wide your frame is. Here's the old hub, and this is what's called a flip-flop hub. And now that I'm educated on this stuff, I understand that this was the side that had the freewheel on it, which is right here. This other side is I now understand is for a fixed gear. You can't actually put one of these adapters onto this side, but after you take the freewheel off, you can actually put one on this side. But I didn't want to convert this to a fixed gear. I want to be able to coast, you know. I didn't want to convert this to a fixed gear, so this was the only option, was to buy another hub. And so I finally got it back in the bike shop. This video has been like literally a month in the making at this point. And yeah, now I'm gonna actually try to put these brakes on. So again, I'm not sure if I'm gonna need the 160 or the 180. I'm probably gonna start with the 180, and if it's too big, I'll go down to the 160. So here we got the 180 millimeter rotor. Obviously got your 6 bolts, and it tells you here, I don't know if you can really see that, but it tells you which way it rotates. So yeah, from here you literally just bolt this onto the hub, and that's pretty much it. These bolts are star bits, which I believe I have in here somewhere. That's the one. All right, now that all these bolts are in, I'm just gonna kind of play around with the bike and make sure this fits, which I'm pretty sure it should. Yep, everything lines up, it fits in there. As you can see, everything seems to fit, so now I'm gonna look to get that adapter on the hub and go from there. So the next step, you gotta pull this Allen bolt out. Like I was saying, this isn't an actual axle. There's just 2 Allen bolts, one on either side, and then they just thread in there, as you can see. And so the next piece we're gonna need, if I could find it, where did it go? There it is. Okay, so this is the next part we need, the stacked BMX hydro disc brake adapter. This just lines up like so. And again, it doesn't need to be super tight for now because there's gonna be a lot of adjusting that I need to do. This goes in like so. And I think I will need to pull the frame apart a little bit to get this to fit. All right, okay. So now this should just slide in like it did before. I don't exactly know why this isn't really lining up like I thought it should. The 180 seems a bit big, to be honest with you. It seems a bit big. All right, yeah, so the chain should have no problem clearing. Now I need, actually the 180 doesn't look that big now that I'm thinking about it, because I am gonna need one of these Shimano adapters on there, which is gonna make it taller. So you could kind of get the gist of this. And I'm just gonna get this in place for now. I'm not banking on this being smooth. I swear to God, when I start recording, nothing goes to plan. Things just start falling out of my hands magically. Yeah, well, in theory this would work, but the rotor is way too small. All right, let me try taking this adapter back off. This seems to be a problem. I'm gonna try the 160 and see if that works, because you can see it's not as tall. Actually, this looks like it might work. It is grabbing the rotor, but just barely. But that might be the best we get here. So, unfortunately, I need to pull this off one last time. I should be able to do this. So now I'll tighten up the adapter. So before I go and tighten anything up, I'm going to grab the bolts for the brake. Look, man, I don't care. Yeah, the fact that it says 160 millimeter rotor only, dude, like, come on. I already broke every rule with this bike, so what's one more? The wheel is not even centered. I don't know if you could see that, but the wheel isn't even centered on the frame anymore. So the brake has to be all the way in, for this to even be remotely possible. It is rubbing, but there's really nothing else I can do about that. So then to run this cable, because you can't, there's no factory locations to run this, I'll just have to zip tie it to the frame. Wait. This might work. This might work. What I'm thinking is you don't want to move these bolts. You don't want to move these bolts out this way. You want to move this adapter that way. So these washers push this adapter that way, and I had the brakes adjusted all the way that way, but because the spacer, or the adapter rather, because the adapter is now more this way, I can just adjust the brakes accordingly, and now there's no rubbing. I got all these zip ties on here to hold the brake cable in place. Well, I guess it's not a cable, but the brake line in place. I'm gonna give one last walk around of what I did and just kind of showing the parts that I used and how everything's on there. So the first thing is the hub. And so you can see in there, this is a Box 3 Pro disc hub, I think is what it's called. And that hub has a 6-bolt adapter fixed to it. And that's what this Shimano 180mm rotor bolts to. So then you have your stacked BMX hydraulic disc brake adapter that goes on the axle and just kind of sits here to mimic what would come stock on a bike with disc brakes. And so attached to this stacked BMX adapter, you have a Shimano. This is a 160mm adapter, and this is a 180mm rotor, which technically you're not supposed to do. But if I'd used the 180mm adapter, the brake pads wouldn't have grabbed the rotor, and then the brakes wouldn't work, obviously. So I needed to use the shorter one of the two, which was the 160. I wanted to move the adapter that way. So I put the washer on the other side of the stacked BMX adapter to create a little bit of space because there was some rubbing on the brake pads to the rotor. And then obviously you have your brake. This is a Shimano MT200 hydraulic disc brake. You have this adapter that wouldn't normally be there. It pushes the whole wheel that way, just a hair. So it doesn't really matter that the wheel is off-centered a little bit as long as it is straight. If you have the wheel crooked at all, then you run into problems. But I have the axle, everything is straight. It's just off-centered because of the adapters that I had to use. Chain is good. It's not too tight, not too loose. I could put the pegs back on, but because I already have everything all together, I really don't want to take everything back off because I would have to take the whole axle back off and the hub and the wheel and everything. I would have to remove everything I just did to put the pegs back on. And really, I'm still learning, and I don't really do combos or anything, at least not yet. So I don't really have a use for the pegs. So for now, I'm just going to leave them off. That way I don't have to take anything back off. And got my lever up here. Lever's adjusted. I believe it's a 2mm Allen in there. I don't know why it won't focus, but you can see that 2mm Allen in there. And if you tighten it, the brake lever comes out. And so I just adjusted it out so it's where I want it to be. And that's pretty much it. I appreciate everybody watching this video. This is a mistake that I don't want anybody else to make. That's why I made this video. And I put my own money on the line and I put my own bike on the line because I wanted to show that not everything you see on the internet is actually true. You know what I mean? And I want to save people from making this same mistake, thinking they could just buy this adapter and buy the brakes and just put them on. That's not how it works. You need to buy a new hub. If you have, so this is a Big Flyer HD, but if you have just a regular Big Flyer or a regular Big Ripper, it doesn't have to be a Dblocks. It doesn't have a hub that's compatible with these disc brakes. And so you have to buy a new hub, unfortunately. The total cost of this build, I'll probably put it on screen now, I'll calculate it, but it's probably in the $400 range. And there was somebody who commented on another video of somebody doing this conversion that this costs like $125. And I was like, dude, you could not be more wrong. Like, that's somebody who clearly hasn't done this conversion themselves and they're just believing what they see on the internet, and it's not true. This hub alone was $280 shipped. The brake rotors, I bought a 160 and a 180. They were probably 30 a piece. Stack BMX adapter was $100. These Shimano adapters, 160 and 180, they were probably $15 a piece. The Shimano MT200s were 50 or 60 bucks. This is not cheap, and it's on a bike. You know what I mean? You have to have the bike before you could do the brake conversion. So I wanted to make this video so that nobody makes this same mistake and that people stop believing everything they see on the internet. And this is a lot more technical, and it's always more complicated than people make it seem on the internet. I waited over a month, probably a month and a half for all these parts to come in. I waited 2 weeks alone just for the hub. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys next time.